From our free daily newsletter, the latest from podnews.net with supporting cast. A community to connect BIPOC creators through education, networking and partnerships. BIPOC Podcast Creators has announced that it's closing. The co-founders announced that the closure is partially driven by capacity and time constraints, but also reflects the structural challenges of sustaining community-driven work in the current content creator landscape. The industry benefits enormously from communities like ours, said co-founder Maribel Quesada-Smith, but the infrastructure to sustain them long-term requires arduous work and significant financial investment. And frankly, it's not enough to ask our creators to pay to make up this difference. VPod has launched dynamic 3D branding for any video podcast, particularly useful for product placements and logos, as well as busy podcast publishers. The toolkit will be demonstrated at the podcast show later this month. Yesterday, we reported on what we called Spotify's video lock-in. This story was based on screenshots of Podigy's implementation of Spotify's video distribution API, which we erroneously attributed to Spotify's own UX. We're happy to make that distinction clear. What's a little less clear is the extent of the lock-in. Spotify denies that creators are permanently locked in to using a Spotify API feed if they opt for video distribution in this way, though the company has confirmed that changing your feed back to RSS requires manual work from both the podcast hosting company and from Spotify itself. From others, we hear that this reversion process may remove comments, reviews, and video files from your podcast. And we also understand that following our story yesterday, Spotify has contacted all partners to clarify messaging about this process. Not that any of us would know. At least 2 podcast hosting companies have told us that the whole API is under a non-disclosure agreement and that they're prohibited from speaking about it. Podtrac has published its April 2026 podcast rankers. The Volume is a new publisher. A new audio post-production house has launched. Syrup Sound specializes in podcast sound design and mixing and is founded by Gaetan Harris, a former senior sound designer at Pacific Content. He'll be at the podcast show later this month. Speaking of which, the podcast show in London has published a number of new speakers for its event. Our editor, James Cridland, that's me, will start day 1 with a reveal of the new Pod News report card results. From Apple Podcasts, Susie Warhurst, head of international podcasts, will be speaking about video, joined by Acast's Laura Hagen and Aussie podcasters Tony and Ryan. Day 2 includes YouTube's Steve McClendon and Stella Binns for a deep dive into the platform's global podcasting strategy and the evolving creator landscape. Well, we interview the event's co-founder Jason Carter in the Pod News Weekly Review today. And Acast are claiming a world first, the first quarterly earnings call to be a video podcast on Apple Podcasts. That's quite specific. You can watch the Acast Financial Reporting podcast for the presentation, which we think is from Acast's Stockholm video studio. In People News, congratulations to Radiolab founder Jad Abumrad, who was awarded the Bill Ayres Social Justice Award last night at Why Hunger's Chapin Awards Gala in New York City. And in podcast news, Attitude Presents Out with Susie Ruffle is a newly imagined podcast from the UK's Attitude magazine. Now in video, the award-winning show promises a high-profile guest lineup and is part of a redesign of the LGBTQ+ magazine's brand. And for almost 3 decades, One Nation and Pauline Hanson have been ridiculed, dismissed and shut out. Now, as the party surges in the polls and is a serious contender for a second lower house seat in Australia's federal parliament, no one is laughing. In the making of One Nation, host Aislinn McGee joins politics experts from Australia and overseas to break down how a party built on fear and grievance thrived, died and rose again to upend Australian politics. And this podcast is sponsored by Supporting Cast. Your subscribers shouldn't be someone else's email list. Other platforms keep the keys to your audience, their payment info, their contact details, their loyalty. Supporting Cast hands them back. Build a business you actually own with Supporting Cast. There's a link in our show notes for them. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe for free, we're at podnews.net.